Hey everybody, I am live. We're live on Facebook. Very exciting. It always takes like a little second on this end to really make sure that everything is kind of all connected into itself. And so sometimes it's hard for me to know to make sure that we really got all the ducks in a row. So sometimes that's why I have an awkward pause at the beginning. But I am glad that you're here. I'm super excited to be here with you today as we dive into the follicular phase. Happy Sunday. It is the 15th, which is crazy. I can't believe we're so close to the holiday season. It's pretty wild. So welcome. We're so excited to have you here. As you're jumping on with us today, please let us know in the comments, where are you coming in from? Where are you joining us from today? Let us know. Type where you're at. Again, I am here in Iowa. Excited to be with you today. It's getting kind of chilly outside, so that is what I've been looking forward to. I'm peeking out my window. It's pretty gray, a little bit stormy, but I am excited to be here with you. We can bring our own sunshine to this party today, and I'm really excited to have you guys with us. Luce is here with us. She said, I'll try to understand everything. She's coming to us from Peru, so awesome. We're got international with this cycle party. Welcome. Shamira is joining us. Where are you calling in from, Shamira? Hello. Jess is here from Columbus, Ohio. Excited to see you ladies today with us. Again, if you're just joining us, let us know where you're calling in from. And just know that we're really excited to have you there. This group has been super fun this week. I have been seeing great comments and questions and community starting to get built as we all can rally together around this topic of the cycle. It's something that we all have in common. It's something that really kind of goes across all these different potential barriers that we can have as humans and as women, and really can create some common ground on this thing that we all really kind of becomes a big part of our life. And so I've just been really excited to see the connections that are going on. Please keep it up. Ask your questions, post in the group. This is a space for you guys. So if something is confusing to you, you're not sure about it, there is no question too big or too small, nothing off limits. So definitely make sure that you ask your questions. And again, let us know where you're coming in from today as we are getting started. So I've got a couple of things that I wanted to go over before we jump into the follicular phase that we're going to go over today. So a couple of pieces are, number one, this group, the intention is social learning. So we really want to create this space where we can ask questions, get our questions answered, and it just gives us some different options to have on our group. So if you go into our group page and you look on the left-hand side, there's something that's called units up at the top. And what these units offer is a great way for us to kind of connect and collect information. So I've made a couple of worksheets for these videos. I've been posting the video, like the video from last week. It's in a unit called the menstrual unit. And I'll do the same thing this week with this video. But as we continue to gather more information, it's just nice to have a place and kind of these containers where everything can live, because it can be hard to keep track when we get more and more people into this space. So social learning units on the side. If you've got questions about that or where to find something, let me know. Be super happy to answer that for you. But we'll continue to gather worksheets, videos, things of that nature, and those will go into those units on the side. So yeah, just wanted to give a little bit of a heads up about that in case you haven't seen those yet. So again, if you are just joining us or if you're catching the replay, let us know where you're joining in from. Really excited to have you all here today with us. And another little invitation, invite friends, right? As we are going into this knowledge, we are starting to see how infrequently we really had access to this information that could have been really supportive to us. So it's great to invite other people who may be needing or wanting this information as well. So definitely be sure to invite your friends who could use this cycle information. We will do other things after this first challenge. So excited to have you guys with us. And I wanted to start off today by just having a little time for a celebration. What has been going well for you this week? And if you know where you're at in your cycle right now, I would love for you to let us know where you're at in your cycle, if you're starting to track it and put those pieces together. So I'm actually in the follicular phase of my cycle, which is really great. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So it's super handy. Hey, Tammy, thanks for joining us. So yeah, I'm in the follicular phase. I'm excited to be able to start to partner with all of these parts of my cycle. And so if you know where you're at in your cycle, I would love for you to share it with us today as we are really diving into this topic. So one more little thing I wanted to go over before we jump into the new information this week, what is a recap from last week. So if you didn't see the video yet, it's posted in the units and it's posted as an announcement on the top of our page. And we talked all about menstruation or the period. So if you missed that, really watch that video. There's a ton of great information, tons of great questions. And just a little high level is that true periods happen when we ovulate. So in order to know if we're really having true periods, we need to kind of be checking whether we're ovulating or not. Because if we don't ovulate and we're not on hormonal birth control, that can be an ovulatory period. So there could be a bleed even if you didn't ovulate. And that can even happen when we're healthy. It doesn't mean necessarily something that's bad unless it's something that's happening every single time. And the other way, if you are on hormonal birth control and you're still having a period, it would be a breakthrough bleed. That's what it's called. So it wouldn't, again, be considered that true period. So that's just a kind of a high level, some of those pieces that we talked about last week that I just wanted to keep people up to speed. So Jess said, my menstruation cup wasn't bad and I'm excited to have a healthier period. I just ended my period yesterday, learning why I feel so much. And it was because I was synced to the full moon. Makes sense. Oh yeah, the full moon can definitely intensify those feelings, especially having our period around the full moon. So sending lots of positive vibes to you, Jess, and excited to hear about how the cup went for you. So again, as we're going through today, post your questions. Let me know if you need any support and we are going to dive in. So I wanted to go over our agreements again as we are learning about all of the phases. These are the agreements that we're going to make together. So number one is the big red rule. Your body is the ultimate authority. It's more important than anything that I say, anything that Sunny says, anything that anyone else in the group says, anything that any book you read. Our bodies are the ultimate authority. And really starting to understand our really interesting and unique cycles and our unique periods and our unique fluctuations can help us know how to talk to healthcare professionals, can help us get that support that we may need from an outside perspective. But our body is the ultimate authority. And the closer that you get with her, the easier it's going to be to detect and understand those different messages, because our bodies are always asking us for things. They have cravings that help us, know what we may be missing in our diets, all of these different pieces. So that's number one, the first agreement we're going to make. The second agreement, we're going to go over a baseline information, kind of maybe talking to the average or what can be most common. But you may have different variations in your cycle than what we talk about. I may talk about follicular phase as this high energy, and you may say, I don't feel like that at all. That's okay. Again, remember rule number one. But we're, again, just kind of going to teach to that most typical or average, but always use your own information and your own authority, which is really great for you to start tracking so that you can kind of know how do you line up among all of these different pieces. Number three, I do not know all of the answers, and I commit to tell you when I do not know the answer to something, and really help to locate resources and bring clarity. And the last agreement that we're going to make together today is honesty. Honesty is super important. There aren't a lot of spaces where we can ask real questions about this topic, so all questions are welcome. Nothing is too abstract or weird. This is a really safe space. Lou said she just started her cycle. I think you mean like the period today, and so her back is killing her. Sending you positive vibes to your back. So now we're going to jump into the follicular phase, and I am going to share my screen. One more comment from Jess. She said, I want so badly to know what my body needs and wants. I would feel so powerful. Sometimes it makes me think why we weren't taught this. Jess, Absolutely. I ask myself that question almost daily because I think I told you guys this last week. When I started understanding this cycle information, I thought I was late to the party because it was like became so clear, all of these different pieces. And then the more women I talk to and interact with, the more I kind of see the bigger picture that overall it's just something that was lacking for most of us, which is a bummer. The only good news is that now that we're starting to learn and tap into this, we can really advocate for different choices and different opportunities to be available for the women that come after us, our friends, our family. We can start spreading that message to other people. We've got some other people joining us. Hey, Taylor. Hey, Alyssa. Thank you for being here. Again, let us know where you're watching from today, whether you're here live or the replay. And we are going to dive in to the follicular phase information. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that you guys can kind of see some different pieces. So again, we are doing a reintroduction to our menstrual cycle. And again, like if you heard last week, it is not just the period, it is this entire process that we're always going through, and we're always somewhere within our cycle. So in order to reclaim the power of our cycle, we really have to understand how we fluctuate so we can partner with it. Everyone's cycles are different, but we can really start to use some baseline information to help predict what is going on for us. So excited to go on to the next phase with you all today. So again, if you missed last week, I'm Alyx Coble-Frakes, and the picture is of me and Sunny Sink. So we are the co-founders of the Agenda Period. So my background, I'm a holistic health and period coach, and I work with women one-on-one and in groups to up-level each area of their life, and we work specifically around period empowerment. So when I was starting my health coaching business, I started to learn about my own cycle, and when I learned about it, I really wanted a tool to help me schedule my business with my menstrual cycle. And because it didn't exist, I asked Sunny to jump on board, and we have created the Agenda Period. So we're really showing women how they can actually use the cycle to their advantage for their ultimate productivity and impact in the world. And it has been a phenomenal project to be working on. And that's why we're really excited to be here with you all, sharing the cycle knowledge, sharing some of the pieces we've uncovered, and really helping to spread that empowering message to all the women that we know. So again, when we talk about the cycle, we're going to dive in now. So there are really these two different pieces that are going on. So the cycle, there's the pre-ovulation and post-ovulation. Then we look at what's going on in the ovaries, that really kind of those three phases, the follicular, the ovulation, and then the luteal. And then what's going on in the uterus is the menstrual, follicular, ovulation, and luteal. And as you kind of see, the menstrual phase is going on what's going on in the uterus is going on simultaneously with what's going on in the ovaries. So once we start that first day of flow with our period, the estrogen is starting to come back up, starting to raise in its dominance, start to prepare those next follicles, thus the follicular phase. So sometimes women kind of even talk about having an increase in energy when their period starts, and that's really because the estrogen is rising again, and they're starting to prepare those next follicles for the potential, or for the ovulation, or for the potential pregnancy that could happen. So kind of think of these things happening simultaneously. When the menstrual cycle, the period actually starts, is when we increase that estrogen and the follicles are getting prepared, thus follicular phase. So we're going to kind of be focusing on that today, and you can kind of think of it, it's the thing that's going on in the ovarian cycle from the start, and it kind of shifts into more predominance in the uterus as we wrap up the period. So it's phase, what we consider to be kind of like the second phase that we go through. So we are going to do a deep dive into that today. Again, this is that chart that kind of shows typically the menstrual, the period, the menstrual phase will last anywhere from 1 to 7 days. Follicular, remember, it really is kind of beginning over here on day 1, but it goes from day 1 until about day maybe 12 to 14. So it's kind of this entire chunk, but we can really feel that energy increase even more as we are ending and wrapping up the period. So it's kind of just showing how that energy is steadily rising, and there's that interplay that's going on. Hey, Karen, we've got a lot of people joining us. Beth in her luteal phase, Tammy's in her luteal phase. We love the luteal phase. We love all of the phases. So welcome. We can celebrate wherever you're at today, and I am excited to have you here. If you're just jumping on with us, let us know where you're joining from. We'd really love to hear from you. So here we are, our little graph showing those, the kind of the different flow of the cycle. Hey, Karen, so nice to see you. Awesome. So today's discussion, what we're really going to look at is the follicular phase, all about our inner spring. So we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the phase. The follicular phase can feel like our doing time. We can look at some potential challenges that even can happen in this phase, some of the things that I've experienced or that other people we've worked with have experienced, and then really kind of, again, seeing how can we begin to partner with this phase of our cycle. So exciting stuff ahead today. Please post your questions if you have any questions or comments as we go along. So happy to answer those for you. So as we are getting started, I'd love to just start with a question. Have you heard of the follicular phase before this group? Yeah, that's just the question. Have you heard about the follicular phase? Why or why not? And what kind of comes to mind when you hear the word follicular? I had never really heard of this. I had never heard of this phase before I started to really deeply do this work before the agenda period came about. I mean, I had maybe lightly touched on it in some books. I've read Alyx Coble-Frakes and some different awesome women in this space talk about the 4 phases, but I had really never done a deep dive or really understood much about it. Something I did not hear about in school. When I learned about the cycle, I really only learned about menstruation. So it was not something I was familiar with. And we've got some comments coming in. So big challenges in my follicular phase. So I'm excited to hear your info. Beth, if you want to post about some of those, I would love to kind of be able to keep touch base with you. Jess, yes, I have from a healing hormones class, but it's only been recent. Yep. And yes, thanks to Women Code by Alyx Coble-Frakes. Yeah, so that was my first introduction to it, but that happened in college, right? So it was years and years after having gone through the follicular phase that I had heard about it at all. Jess, never growing up have I heard of this phase. Only time I knew any women who knew about the phases were women who had kids. Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. That's something that we hear a lot when we go out and talk about the agenda, is that women say it's something that they never even really thought about until they were trying to conceive. Because we kind of have this system, more or less, that we use birth control until we're trying to conceive as a kind of pretty typical practice here. And then as soon as we're trying to conceive, we switch off and start to learn about all of this cycle knowledge rather than kind of learning about it from the beginning. So it's a really interesting point, Jess. So as to why or why not, I don't know if anyone has any theories, but something that I've started to kind of pick up on and heard a little bit in the literature, or even heard sometimes when physicians talk about women using natural family planning rather than using or trusting those hormonal birth control methods. Something that I've kind of heard is, oh, it's so complicated, it wouldn't really be effective, right? Which kind of makes me feel like, oh, are we not trusted? Are we not thought capable of comprehending this process that's going on in our bodies that we're living with day in and day out? And it feels like almost a little offensive to me in some of the ways that we talk about this knowledge for women's bodies as kind of something that is beyond our level of comprehension. And obviously not everyone talks about it like that, but it's kind of been my reception is, oh, why bother? It's so complicated. We'll just kind of use this hormonal birth control, no big deal. I even had people tell me, oh, like I wouldn't trust my teenage daughter to be able to understand it well enough to prevent pregnancy. We should just like keep them on the hormonal birth control. That's much more effective. So I find comments like that a little bit shocking. And I think that can be part of the reason that we're not taught about this, is kind of can seem inaccessible to us because it can feel so complicated, which I don't really think I agree with after being this far into the cycle exploration myself. Jess, the why is because we wouldn't spend money on pills or no one cared to do the research. I think those are pretty good points. You know, once they found out hormonal birth control can be a very lucrative business model, that can be pretty, you know, maybe a reason for people to want to stay in that way. But again, I've also seen some of this idea that our bodies are too complicated to understand or really not predictable. So we shouldn't leave it up to women learning how these processes work. Tammy, I had no idea it existed. I probably would have thought you were talking about hair follicles. Yeah, that's so true. Jess, good point. Never thought of it that way, but there is that messaging that we can't be trusted. And then Luce is saying, I never heard of this and I didn't know there was that phase. Yeah, absolutely. So great comments there, ladies. Keep them rocking and rolling. But again, something I hadn't really ever heard about. And I think it's time to challenge that. So excited to be doing this deep dive with you all. Beth had mostly questions about how short my follicular phase is. Tends to be 3 days if I'm lucky, and not having a big burst of energy. Had some hormone testing last spring, and apparently I'm not ovulating consistently. So I find my follicular phase is shorter in the months that I don't end up ovulating either. Very interesting. So we can maybe come back to some of those things, Beth, and definitely we could do some chatting offline. So the follicular phase is the phase where your ovaries are preparing the egg for ovulation. So like we talked about last week, it's the follicles that have been maturing over the last 100 days. So it's not just the ones that got cooked up last cycle. It's been happening over a process, which is why it can be a while when we're working on period health. It can take a while to kind of balance back out because those follicles can take 90 to 100 days to mature. And so the follicular phase in the current cycle that you're at is when they're doing the final kind of race to see of all of the follicles. There may be 5 or 6 that are close to mature, which one is going to actually be ready to bust out of its little container and be prepared for potential fertilization. And sometimes there may be 1 or 2 follicles that release an egg, and that is how we can have twins, right? So sometimes there may be 2. And sometimes they're not any, but this is the part where all of those follicles that have been maturing over the last 100 days kind of make that last final push to be the chosen lucky egg for that cycle. So during this phase, we can feel increased energy and extroversion. We can maybe feel more positive or happy or confident. So it can be a great time to do some of those external activities like meetings and networking. And when we look at the seasons, the follicular phase can be like that inner spring. So kind of think about things blooming or buds coming up in the spring. Think of, the energy that can come with springtime, and that can be pretty consistent for the follicular phase typically. So really, again, we had started to talk last week about that health report card. All of these different things of in our cycle really start to clue us in to what is going on and how well our body is processing all of these different pieces. So these can be some other ones that you could add to your health report card when we're looking at each phase of my cycle is telling me something. What can I learn? Where are those patterns? And where might I need some additional support, or where might my body need some additional support? So for the number of days, again, it starts on day 1 of the period, and it can be for typically about the first 12 to 14 days. As Beth was saying, for her, sometimes it can be short, and there can be some underlying issues that come with that. So that would just kind of be that typical baseline. In terms of moisture, everything tends to be pretty dry when the period has ended, not like uncomfortably dry, but just not a lot of discharge or a large amount of mucus, but it may feel a slight dampness, but that can be pretty minimal during this part. So those are some of those other signs that you can start tracking along to see where you're at in your cycle. And next week we'll talk about cervical mucus, so something exciting to look forward to. But moisture tends to be pretty dry during this time. Again, that energy. Think of the springtime energy. The desire for doing can feel highly motivating. We can feel light and excited. And for foods, again, we always want to go from that benefits perspective, really listen to what our bodies are asking for, but you may have a desire for light and crisp foods and lighter meals due to the way that the energy is interplaying. Definitely notice appetite being less and eating lighter feels better. Yeah, great noticing, Beth. And Jess said, I know we've been through this, but I'm still confused. We are in our follicular phase during our period. Yes, that is correct. So there are those two cycles that are going. So when we break it up into what's going on in the ovaries and what is going on in the uterus, I can actually flip back to that slide so that we can go over it again, because it's something that is a little bit confusing. So going on in the ovaries really go through these three parts. So the follicular phase, the ovulation when the egg is released, and then the luteal phase. And that's kind of in that zone, more or less. And then the uterine cycle is the menstrual phase, the follicular phase, ovulation, and then the luteal. And so as we see with what's going on in the ovaries and what's going on in the uterus, there's an overlap. So the follicular phase picks back up again when we are starting like around day 1 of our period. So what's going on is that the body did not fertilize an egg the cycle before. So that's why the endometrium starts to shed. And that all those processes start to clue each other in, right? The progesterone goes down because there is no pregnancy to sustain. And so then the lining starts to shed, and then the estrogen starts to raise again to help prepare and mature those follicles to prepare for the egg to be released. So the menstrual is going on at the same time as the follicular phase, right? As that estrogen is raising. Jess, is that clarifying? Let me know if you want something else on that. And Beth said, that's interesting. I usually see increased energy on day 5, but since I was still bleeding, I thought it was an anomaly. Nope, that is not an anomaly. And some of the people we worked with, when they really start to watch these things, there's a lot of some of those frustrating pieces that can go on in the luteal phase, the PMS. And there can actually be that release as soon as we start the period, because again, that's when the estrogen starts to come back up. So Beth, totally all good there. Yep, so we went through all of these on our health report card: number of days, moisture, energy, and foods. And so let's just talk about some of the challenges that can be experienced. We tend to think of this could be, high energy. What could be wrong with that? But there can be some challenges with this part of our cycle as well. So when we have that increased energy, sometimes we can really push ourselves to move quickly in this phase, especially if we've been feeling any guilt or shame about maybe taking it quote unquote too easy during our period. And this can lead to burnout when we push ourselves really quickly. And especially this type of scheduling during this phase can lead us to overcommitting ourselves and feeling frustrated later on in the cycle. So this is one of those things I really started to notice when I began this work was Alyx, Follicular Phase Alyx, used to do my scheduling. This girl would grab my calendar and she would schedule me for so many different activities because my energy was coming back, right? So I was like, okay, I can take on the world. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to meet with this person. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to this meeting and blah, 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 blah. And I would pack my schedule. And what would happen is I'd end up kind of packing it for the next 2 or 3 weeks. But as we're starting to see the cycle, by the time I would get to some of those tasks 2 or 3 weeks later, I'd be back in the luteal phase or coming, around the time to my period again, which would lead to that disconnect, that frustration, me feeling confused and not understanding why all of these things that I just planned and I was so excited to do, I no longer wanted to do them. And I felt really guilty and I thought I was a total failure. This would happen in my business. It happened in my health coaching business when I was getting started. I was just like, man, I had all these things and I don't want to do any of them. And I don't understand why I'm so horrible at my job, right? It caused all of these feelings of guilt and frustration because I wasn't understanding that correlation. And so that's why with the agenda period, we help people start to do their planning and to lay out that calendar when they're menstruating, right? So when we're maybe a little bit lower energy, a little bit more inward, looking ahead and using that part of our cycle to really advocate for what we've got the bandwidth for in the next couple of weeks, and then already going ahead to mark off our next projected period so that we don't do that over scheduling, over committing, and feeling lousy thing, because that cycle is so draining. It's so sad. I've worked with a lot of women. They just say like, I just don't know what's wrong with me today. I just don't want to do anything. I schedule all these things And now I can't show up. I can't do it. And again, that guilt, and it's really just like can be pretty impacted by the cycle. So that is the big challenge, I think, with the follicular phase is too much energy can then sometimes lead to some of those scheduling mishaps down the line. I think another issue that really comes up with this is that women are highly exalted when they are in the kind of energy that comes more naturally in the follicular phase. We tend to love women who are smiling, who are happy, who are, high energy. So we're really raised up for the energy that maybe comes a little bit more easily to us during the follicular and ovulation phases. But as we're seeing, we don't spend the bulk of our life in that phase, right? We spend a lot of time in the luteal phase and quite a bit of time in the menstrual phase. And so not feeling like we can totally love and accept ourselves when we are in those other phases can be really conflicting. And it can push people to maybe kind of fake this energy more often than they really feel like it, which can lead to burnout, health issues, adrenal fatigue, all of these kind of problems in the long term. So we really want to be able to use this energy to our advantage while not feeling super burnt out. So Jess, that's me. Fill my calendar with all the social plans. Beth, yes, sometimes I exercise too intensely, too much, and I'm just exhausted. Yeah, because we feel like, man, this is the time I should push myself. I got to do. And then we can feel that burnout on the other side of it. Jess, it's nice to know I'm not alone with the guilt. Yes, absolutely. You are not alone. This is a pretty common one that we see. And so we can start to combat that by, again, knowing that tendency, being awareness, bringing our loving awareness. When we bring our consciousness to the cycle, it gets increasingly better. So just knowing that we have this tendency is really supportive, and then we can know how to kind of work with it. Karen is saying, I'm perimenopausal. Keeping track of how I feel is so important. The intensity of each phase is off the charts. Being compassionate to how I feel is key. I love this. Yes, that bringing that compassion, bringing that awareness, super important. And again, when we're the ultimate authority, because we're really in tune with what's going on, if there are issues that pop up, we can make adjustments, or we can just say, hey, this is normal for me. I know how to give myself extra love, extra care, extra support during this time to help me counteract. So for me, that was one of the things of, I don't do as much planning during my follicular phase because I know I have that tendency to overschedule myself. So I just put that into a different phase, and that really helps. It helps me have my own back. So what about the follicular phase on the pill? This, you may be wondering if you are on hormonal birth control. And as we talked about last week, this whole cycle, the follicular phase is about prepping the eggs for ovulation. And so if you are on a hormonal birth control that stops ovulation from happening, you may not feel the increased energy that can come with the follicular phase because it's kind of stopping that estrogen because it is not allowing an egg to be matured and released. I think we kind of touched on it last week, but again, depending on what type of hormonal birth control you're on, it can kind of feel like you're almost in a persistent luteal phase all the time. And so you may not feel some of those peaks or that energy boost coming up for you if you are on the pill. Again, each phase of the cycle has different skill sets and strengths. And so we are always focusing on in the agenda from a benefits perspective, right? Like, what are the really great strengths of this phase? And so some of the strengths that we see in the follicular phase are, again, that springtime energy. It can be very playful, risk-taking, adventurous. We can have some of that tenderness or that innocence, kind of thinking about like the spring, right? We're going through this whole new phase again, where our body is preparing this new egg and all of these different pieces. So this can really feel like that innocent time. We may be enthusiastic, assertive, playful, imaginative. So we also kind of have that clean slate. We're done with the bleed. We're ready to try again. This can be a great time to try new things, to start to talk to people about new projects because you're optimistic, right? We don't maybe have some of that lower bandwidth that we may experience later in the phase. So if we are knowing this can be a more resilient time for us, it's a great time to plan our new projects in that way. More willing, yeah, Beth says more willing to travel and try new things. Absolutely. And so if we know we're more prone to that at this time, we may as well use it for our advantage. So if I have something that I'm a little scared to talk to people about, trying it out and testing those waters in the follicular phase is fantastic, because I'm going to have more of that resiliency and bounce back. And this is another one that I see with clients, is when people are trying new things. Maybe they tried it in the luteal phase and it didn't go well, and they said, well, that's just not for me. So I like to help people kind of consider, where were we at in the cycle, and maybe if we just adjust where we plan that activity, we may see some better results there. So those would be some of the things we would say could be some of those great skill sets. Again, it's really the doing phase. So new projects, networking, meetings, really going to be maybe feel easier for you during this phase. And again, on some of the flip side, you may not feel as much like doing small detail-oriented tasks, working alone. I find when I put myself to those kind of tasks during the follicular phase, it can take a lot longer, because I just want to be out there. I want to be doing things. I want to be with people. I want to be networking. And so really honoring what is going to be the easiest for myself during that phase. So super exciting stuff. So I'm curious, are there any other questions that are coming up as we are going through this phase? Anything that you've noticed, or anything that you're like, that seems a little bit different than what I've been experiencing? I would love to talk to you about any of those things. This would be the great time for questions. So definitely type those in the chat if you are catching the replay, or if you're here with us live. And our quote for this week is, to find success on your own terms, achieve it by your own rules, and build a life you are proud to live. So really wanting to work with all of us on being able to feel our best lives, because we are really in alignment with wherever we're at in the cycle. So that is the overview today for the follicular phase. So again, I'll stay on for some time now for any other questions or any other curiosity. And as some questions are starting to come through, I would love for you to say, what is an aha or takeaway from today talking about the follicular phase? Was there anything that you hadn't heard before? Anything that you were surprised about? I would love to hear any of that. So Jess said, on the worksheet, there is a normal versus common. I know we did that for menstruation. Are there any during this phase? So again, I think it really we look at what would be normal, would be having that ovulation that's pretty predictable in that cycle, that we are from cycle to cycle, we're having those ovulations, we're having that healthy conversation, all of our hormones are working together. Common would be, it's pretty common for people to be missing a lot of ovulations, or having those anovulatory bleeds very consistently, or missing periods altogether because they're so stressed out. If we are too stressed, we can stop ovulating. And so I would say that's pretty common, but again, it's not normal. When we are functioning and our cycles are in a flow, a majority of the cycles in a year are going to be having that ovulation occur. And that kind of really, is fed by the follicular phase, that increase of estrogen that prepares the next follicle to be released. So that's a great question, Jess. I would say the normal is having really irregular, really erratic cycles. That's pretty common, not normal. What's normal is that pattern that's happening, that we're in a flow with our bodies. And for the most part during the cycles, we are having an ovulation, if that helps. Beth said, struggle with what exercise to do during this phase when I don't have much energy. Do I force a harder workout or a more gentle exercise? I am always in the camp of more kindness. If our bodies are already struggling, and Beth, you've kind of, talked about some different issues with your cycle, I would really be kind and gentle, maybe doing some nice long walks, some stretching. If you're having that really low energy and we push ourselves really hard in a workout, we can actually do damage. We can injure ourselves more easily if we're having low energy. So I would really listen to the body in that way. And it's hard. We grow up, we have diet culture, we have all of these oppressive messages that we are fighting against. But in order to really heal that, the relationship with the cycle, it starts with listening. And so if you are really low energy, I would listen to that, and I would really recommend some gentler exercises in order to feel better. So yeah, sending so much love. It can be hard when we're having that lower energy. Again, when we're battling all of this conditioning and all of these messages, but really the most radical thing we can do is start to take a stand for our own highest good, listen to our bodies, and stop participating in these toxic things that we may be asked to participate in life. And I know it's hard to push against all those messages. That's why we can create spaces like this to hopefully find a little bit more ease. Jess said, I had no idea that the follicular phase started on day 1 of your period. I used to push my workouts because I wanted to lose weight, but I learned that exhausts the body and you shouldn't do that for every phase. Absolutely. And in general, part of my coaching philosophy and life philosophy is really anti-diet. Intentional weight loss can mess with our brains a lot, and particularly women who are still in their fertile years, there can be good reasons that our bodies don't want to lose a tremendous amount of body fat, because body fat can, help protect. It's there for a reason, help protect a potentially growing fetus, help our bodies bounce back. And so this extreme measure to push our body in that way can be pretty toxic. So that's a little bit of my own soapbox off to the side, but these things are all interconnected. Diet culture, body shame, lack of menstrual equity, all these systems and structures are really tied together. So it's something that we can start to challenge on these different multiple fronts. Beth said, yes, I really like to push ourselves to stay in shape or lose weight. Can be those stories that we grew up with. Absolutely. And we can also decide to take ourselves out of that story, say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to participate in that. It doesn't serve you well. It doesn't serve my cycle well. And I'm just not going to do that anymore. So those are choices that we can make. And it's, again, I think easier when we can band together and just say, yeah, we're not participating in that system in that way anymore. It's not good for anybody. So again, I would love to hear what is your aha or takeaway from this session. And again, any more questions. Jess said, I'm starting to get into intuitive eating. I agree. Our bodies are not always meant to be teeny tiny. Yes, Jess, I am all about intuitive eating. It is really awesome. And again, it goes through so much is connected to the cycle, right? Because instead of battling our cravings or talking really negatively about what our bodies are asking for, if we understand that the cravings can be partnerships to show us where we may need some additional support, where we may need different kinds of foods, we can really use that to our advantage. It doesn't mean we have to eat foods that don't make us feel good, but we can understand, oh, why is my body asking me for that? Maybe I need some vitamins or minerals during this phase that I'm not getting. There are all kinds of ways to eat for the cycle that we can go through in another challenge as well. So lots of great ways to start to use that intuitive eating to support the cycle. Tammy is saying, I used to think that my periods was just wearing me out so much that I was just extra rested when it is over. This showed me why I feel that get up and go so much more effectively the week after my period. Thank you so much. Yay! Knowledge is power. I'm so excited that was helpful. And yeah, when we start to understand that pattern is going to come back up without overdoing it, we can definitely know how to start to batch our tasks and where to place things into our schedule for maximum productivity and impact. So we can know, okay, those activities that require a little bit more of that get up and go, I can know to plan them during my follicular phase. I don't have to feel pressure to do them during my period, because I know in a few days I'm going to get that boost of energy, and I'm going to do them so much more quickly when I feel rested, when I took the time off during my period, and then I can just come into this next phase of my cycle feeling fantastic. So when we really see the benefits of each and every phase and how they work together, it's awesome. So excited that you are all joining me today for this little chat. We're going to be posting some more interactions during this week. And again, we will have another one of these next Sunday talking about ovulation. So I'm super excited. Can't wait to see you all back for that next Sunday. It's a really going to be a really juicy conversation. And again, final invitation, bring your friends, bring your sisters, bring women who need this information. This is truly something that affects every single woman that we know. and really impacts everyone on the planet. And so this is information that we need to be sharing, we need to be talking about, we need to be getting the word out, and we need to start to use it for our advantage so that we can come back into a better rhythm in our lives in general. So thank you so much for joining me today on this deep dive into the follicular phase. And I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you so much, everybody.